You don't need I'm doing legend. He a 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 legend. Welcome to the league. 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 Welcome to the league. To the league. To the league. To the league. To the league.
What's up, everybody? It's Pikel with League of Items, and in today's video we're going to do something real quick in the beginning, talking about the players that I like and why I like them. This is something that I wanted to do because somebody just asked me about it on one of the most recent videos. Jimin Bake? I don't know how to say it. I'm sorry if I butchered it. That's the best I can do. He asked, Pikel, could you explain the history or an insight on why you emphasize how good Beishang is every time? And it's a good question. It boils down to, Pikel, why do you like the players that you do? And it's different for every player, but I figured this would be a good time to talk about it. So, we're going to talk about Beishang specifically, but there are a lot of other players that could qualify for something like this. So a player like the Xiye. I love the Xiye. Sometimes he looks really good. Sometimes he looks really bad. But what is it about him that I like? Generally, I think the players that I gravitate towards are the ones who can do the basic stuff very well in general, but also have some element of their game that is fundamentally different from most people that you watch. So when you look at top laners, for years, top laners were just supposed to play tanks. Nothing happens for the beginning of the game, but then you show up to the late game team fight and you tank some damage. Maybe you engage or something like that, and everybody was happy with the role that a top laner would have at that point. Then there were always top laners who would try to subvert that by playing things that were good against tanks, or like split push or something like that. But for one reason or another, generally the level of difficulty that requires from an execution perspective resulted in teams that were bad trying it and then being bad at it, losing games. People would flame them for losing games and they'd stop wanting to do it. Whereas the good teams never had to try that more difficult playstyle because their players were just better at the generic way to play League of Legends. So for somebody like Beishang, he doesn't really scream out as a player who's fundamentally different from a lot of other players. Other junglers that I like are people like Piosik. I guess Piosik and Beishang are probably the two junglers that I talk the most highly of. And this was also the level that I was talking about Tarzan before he kind of blew up. Not before he blew up. After he blew up the first time, but then he was gone for a year. A lot of people didn't know who he was in the betting space. But he was always a very high caliber jungler. So let's take a look at Beishang specifically. So for Beishang, we can go back all the way to 2018 when he started playing in the LDL. And in the spring, they came in second. In the summer, he came in first. In the grand finals for the LDL, they lost, but getting to the finals is a good thing. And then the team in spring, I'm not 100% sure if Beishang played a lot for this iteration of World Elite, but this is when they had Xiye, Mystic, and Missing, and Xiye was playing at an extremely high level at that point. They ended up going to spring playoffs and not doing that well. In the summer, they didn't do that well, which resulted in a lot of players leaving the team. Well, specifically, Mystic and Xiye left. And then in the Demacia Cup, they didn't play that great again in the 5th to 8th. In the spring, they didn't have a great split. That was when Morgan was on World Elite. That was in the beginning of COVID. Beishang already started to look like a very good jungler at that point, and they had a very mid-game-centric team where they would play things with Teacher Ma, and they would try to spike around mid-game. So Teacher Ma would be playing things like Galio, and the whole point of a champion like Galio is to help your jungler, but also your other carries. But for the most part, in the middle of the game, you want to be able to help your jungler because your jungler or your support are going to be your primary engage. So you're following up on that engage. And they played that style really well. That requires a lot of aggression, quick decision making, making the quick decision making, but also the correct type of decision making, and playing to your win conditions. So Beishang ticks all those boxes. He continuously plays towards his win conditions. And we'll look at his champion pool in a little bit, but his champion pool kind of goes hand in hand with that. Then in the spring, they were 5th or 6th again. Summer, they were 7th. Summer, they were 7th or 8th. Demacia Cup, they played really well in the Demacia Cup, and that's when they had Breathe. So Breathe and Beishang were a great combination. You already knew that Zhaomeng and Missing were a solid bot lane. There were a lot of games that they were very competitive in these matches against better teams. And then Breathe coming in for Morgan. Breathe started playing better almost instantly. Breathe came over from a different team. I forget what team he came from, but I didn't have a very high opinion of Breathe in the beginning. But now I think that Breathe is an extremely good top laner. But you can't give all the credit to Breathe. You can't give all the credit to Beishang. It was really them acting as a duo. The other benefit for Beishang was that he had a very strong bot lane. So being very strong in the early game by playing through top and mid, being strong in the mid game through the team compositions that you're picking with champions like Galio, allow you to transition into the late game where a player like Zhaomeng can really carry from like the 20-minute mark on. Or if it's a very close game, it'll be close enough because of everything that the top half of the map has done to allow Zhaomeng the opportunity to maybe flip a game. So they played well in Demacia Cup. The spring they weren't great. And the summer they weren't great, but they started really picking up steam during summer, and during the playoffs they made a very long run, which was very impressive, but not that surprising because Breathe, Beishang, Elk, and Missing were all playing at an extremely high level. Shanks was underwhelming and still is kind of underwhelming. I'm not a huge fan of Shanks, but the rest of that team is extremely strong. If World Elite was able to maintain that roster and then bring in a new mid laner, you'd be looking at a very strong team. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. Breathe went to BLG, and then Elk and Missing went to Ultra Prime. Or no, Elk went to Ultra Prime. Missing went to JDG. So you have these strong players leaving the team. Now Beishang is playing with much weaker players, so the execution in the early game isn't there. The team compositions have not put Beishang in a great spot to succeed, in my opinion. And he didn't really play for the first 6 or 7 matches. I guess maybe 5 or 6 matches. And now, because of the problems that they're having with the bot lane, you don't even have that late game insurance from your bot lane. So let's take a look at the champions from his career. So if we're just looking at win rate, obviously a lot of these have barely any games, so it's not very important. But things like Trundle were very strong during 2021 as a counter to like the Hecarim meta that was going on. Elise is a very good champion Elise is a champion that I kind of gravitate towards for my junglers, because in order to play Elise at a high level, you're looking for picks. In order to have a good opportunity for a pick to occur, you need to have a tempo advantage, and you need to be looking like a couple steps ahead. You need to sweep out vision, set up wards that allow you to see where the enemy's coming from, and then just like death bush them. Silas it's not like a super difficult champion to play, but it is somewhat mechanically intense. There aren't like a lot of decisions you have to make. You kind of do just button mash after a certain point. But it is the type of champion that good players gravitated towards at that point because he could carry the game. He was a broken champion. Kha'Zix, another different style of champion. So somebody like Beishang plays Lilia, Aatrox, Trundle, Elise, Silas, Kha'Zix, and has good win rates on all these different champions. I know it's a small sample size, but to pull it out on stage means that he's comfortable at a wide range of champions. That's very impressive. Is Beishang? I think he's also on the solo queue ladder, plays a ton of Echo, and is almost thought of as like an Echo one trick. His most common champion that also has an extremely high win rate is Olaf. So Olaf feeds into that narrative that he's a very good early and mid game player that can take that early game lead, transition it into a win. Echo Graves. This was during the Graves carry meta, so this is another reason why you can have a high opinion of him. He's good at the suffocating style with champions like Elise and Italy. He can play the carry style where you're farming up like a ridiculous amount, which was only really an option within the past 2 years. But then you can also play tanks or Olaf. So just a very diverse player, has a lot of different champions at his disposal. This is what I don't like to see. Sejuani, Dr. Mundo, Volibear, Gragas. These are just these champions fall off pretty hard, and it's much more difficult to carry on. The Diana games, I guess I don't know when those occurred. I'm not going to look into that, but that generally requires to not be going up against like things like Hecarim, because you don't want to get run over literally. So that's it. I guess that's really the best way to explain why I like Beishang specifically, but that's also why I like players like the Xiye. This year we've seen the Xiye play Malphite, which is simple. We've seen him play Scion, which is a little bit more difficult. We've seen him play Quinn at an extremely high level as a counter pick. Not every player has all of those tools at their disposal, and those are the players that I like in general. So let's talk. Hopefully that answered your question. If there are any other players that you have questions like that about, let me know. The results from yesterday were Rare Atom beat FPX. I was not on that. I did have one. It was funny. I was making lineups last night, and I made a roster with like Genji and JDG, I think, and then I had FPX in the team slot, and then I was like, well, I might as well throw Rare Atom in there, and that came in like 30-something in the big tournament. I don't know how it would have done in the 333, but it's not a lineup that I would have run in the 333, to be fair. But JDG won, LGD won, which is kind of what we expected. In the LCK, we had Damwon win, and they got a 2-0, and then Genji won with a 2-0 as well. In the LEC, we had Misfits with a big comeback over G2. That's a very bad loss from G2. And it's not that it's something that's going to be reproduced every time they have a large lead, but losing from a 10,000 gold advantage is a huge mistake. It's a huge mistake and the result of multiple huge mistakes, and it could kind of destroy some teams' mentals. I don't expect it to destroy G2, but it's a very bad look for G2. Rogue against Fnatic. Fnatic won that. Rogue gave over Twisted Fate to Humanoid, which is insane that teams still do that kind of stuff. I know it doesn't really matter. Like, we're going to get into the playoffs, and I don't think that it happens as often there. But Malrong didn't have a good game. I don't think he played as bad as the kill line suggested. But it was pretty funny. Somebody was talking about Humanoid, and it's like, when Humanoid is on Twisted Fate, you do almost nothing, and like, people think you're good because of it. I don't know. It's pretty frustrating. Just a kind of a crazy thing to I just don't understand. Vitality took care of SK Gaming. That game was very close, pretty sketchy, but they pulled it out. BDS beat Astralis, and then XL beat Mad Lions. Mad Lions is looking pretty bad. For everybody who thinks that Elyoya is the best jungler in Europe, it's getting pretty tough to understand how the best jungler in Europe can't carry his team. And obviously, I'm being somewhat facetious. It is difficult. League of Legends is already a difficult game, and when your team isn't firing on all cylinders, like, obviously it can get extremely difficult to win games. Like, you don't need to play perfect every single game, but it will start to feel like that. Let's go to... Where's the LEC? Scoreboard. Yeah, so Armlet, overrated. Well, okay, relax, Michael. Armlet is a lot of the times not going to be a huge difference maker in these games. Elyoya, thought of as the best jungler by some people. Nope. Reeker hasn't looked great so far this year. Unforgiven hasn't looked great so far this year. And then Kaiser is a pretty good player. So basically, people have to make the argument that Reeker and Unforgiven are horrible and dragging down this team that has the best jungler in the world. I think that they have made a lot of mistakes. But at the end of the day, I don't think that Unforgiven and Reeker are the worst mid laner or AD carry in the league, which is basically what they would have to be if Elyoya was in fact the best jungler in the league. But yeah, giving away the Jinx, I don't like that. Giving away... Well, basically the Jinx. I don't like giving away the Jinx, and then I'm not a huge fan of Victor, not a huge fan of Ahri. The Kled into Aatrox is good. I'm pretty sure it's just like a counter pick. That's basically it. BDS against Astralis. Bloody game. BDS wins. Vitality against SK. Vitality barely won that game. Fnatic pretty convincing over Rogue, to be fair. And then this game, G2 had that 10k lead, so sad. And then we have matches going on right now. 100 Thieves beat TSM. And I almost wanted to take a look at that game and like kind of explain why it was so bad. Cloud9 beat Dig. Golden Guardians upset Team Liquid, which was pretty surprising. But so the problem with the 100 Thieves, or the TSM against 100 Thieves match, is that TSM was blue side and didn't pick Jinx. I don't understand why teams play it this way. So TSM picked Gwen, which is a good champion, but Gwen isn't good enough to hard carry a game against Jinx a lot of the time. Like, I understand like the thought process where it's like, well, Gwen is immune to Jinx unless she's up in her face. If Gwen is up in Jinx's face, Gwen's gonna kill Jinx. If you can't gap close on Jinx, well, she can't damage you. But they pulled out Tryndamere, and Tryndamere just dove Gwen at one point, which was pretty funny, but not shocking because he can stay in that close range. And then later on, Huni sees Abadage running at him in the bot lane and doesn't do anything. And then Abadage gets a kill. Abadage realizes that he's getting TP'd on, goes into a bush. Huni, instead of just walking away from the play, kind of stands there, dies for no reason. And then Abadage dies to a tower. I forget who picked up the kill, but somebody from TSM did get the kill credit. Then the play goes up towards topside. Jinx is backing on a ward, so FBI was backing on a ward. They stop him from backing. Then Yurson flashes forward, hooks him, and they kill the Jinx. So it's like the 22-minute and 30-second mark, and TSM just got a pick, but they couldn't do Baron. And that is my biggest problem with Jhin. Any other team, well, not any other team, any team in the LCS is capable of making that call. Some people were pinging that call saying we should do Baron, but they ended up going mid and trying to take mid tower instead. If you're TSM, you are losing so many games. Just make the right play. The right play is to go for Baron at that point in the game. The only reason why they could have justification for not doing that is because they had Jhin. So then you have to ask yourself, if Jhin is eliminating the correct play from the map, then why are we picking Jhin in any situation? If that was an Aphelios or a Jinx, that game looks completely different. They wouldn't have the same kind of lead maybe because they did a good job during the laning phase, but they didn't create a large enough advantage to get Jhin to the point where he was being dominant. So they either didn't play the early game well enough, or they just drafted a team composition that can't do Baron around the 20-minute mark, which is something that I think most teams should be drafting towards, because it's an easy portion of the game to predict to. Like, every team should know how fast that they can do Baron around the 20-minute mark with their team composition. And that's just one of the many reasons why I hate Jhin. And the funny thing is, like, a minute and a half later, Kaido gets caught top lane, and then guess what? 100 Thieves does Baron at the 24-minute mark because they have a team composition that doesn't suck. So that's my rant for the day. So we've talked about Beishang, we've ranted about the games from today. Let's talk about tomorrow. So let's do this. Let me get Twitter up on my screen. Just want to make sure that I don't let anything crazy go on the screen, because, like, obviously there's so much shit going on in the world right now. Don't want to have anything graphic on the screen. Let me get the rosters. All right, so I just retweeted it. LPL Fan Club coming through clutch yet again. Okay, perfect. World lead against Ultra Prime. Bubu against Allies. Close enough, doesn't really matter to me. Beishang against Hacker. I prefer Beishang. Xiye against Cryan. I prefer Xiye. Stay and Kadaya against Elkin Xiaoxi. I prefer Elkin Xiaoxi. That's a close match. The money line is plus 142 for World Elite. I'm on World Elite. The return of Xiye. Xiye, Beishang, very good combination. I think that we're going to get a win out of them. At least one win. Hopefully a match win. I think the plus 1.5 map is a slam dunk. I don't have to think about that twice. Let's go back to that. Where's game 2? Game 2. Weibo Gaming against OMG. Some people think I don't like Weibo Gaming. It's The Shining, first of all. Second of all, I love The Shy. Third of all, I had Suning as my dark horse when they made it to World Finals, so I think I might like them a little bit. The Shy against Shanji, I prefer The Shy. I prefer SFM. I prefer Cream for champion pool reasons. And that's another thing I guess I should have talked about is, like, there was, in that match between Misfits and G2, we had Vetio on Akali, I think. And Akali is the type of champion where they were losing by 10,000 gold. The enemy made a mistake. They got back in the game because they had an Akali. Like that, those are the kinds of champions you want. You don't want TF walking around throwing one gold card at somebody and then waiting until he can throw another gold card at somebody. It's just insane. Like, you have champions doing insane stuff like Akali, and then you have TF. But yeah, I definitely prefer Weibo Gaming. This is the kind of match where, like, if they were still called Suning and they had Bin instead of The Shy, people would be saying this is a spot that Weibo can definitely lose. They do remind me of DRX sometimes, where they just lose these insane matches that you would never expect them to lose. But that says more about OMG than anything. Then the next match, we have EDG against Top Esports. EDG has lost a few matches recently. Xiaoshang is in for Flandre. Wayward against Xiaoshang. I don't think there's a huge lean either direction. Tian against Jai Jai. I don't think there's a huge lean either direction. Jai Jai has played better in the past year and a half than Tian has, but Tian has won a world championship. Tian's a great Lee Sin player. So this could be a spot where the matchup is maybe even Tian favored once the draft is complete. Knight against Scout. Scout's team has had more success, but is he better than Knight one-on-one? I think probably not. Jackie Love and Mark against Viper and Mako. Viper and Mako definitely better than Jackie Love and Mark. But again, there are situations where Jackie Love could play the aggressive side of a matchup, snowball during the laning phase, and then look insane. Yeah, like if Jackie Love played Zeri, or if he plays Draven again, like Draven theoretically could be very good against Viper's champion pool. So that'd be cool if we saw something like that tomorrow. I like Top Esports for the upset there because I think EDG is still overrated. Let's go to the LCK. In the LCK, we have KT Rolster against Fredit Brion. I'll be on KT Rolster. I always say the same thing about Fredit Brion. Don't know anything about him. Don't like him. I have a tough time reading him. T1 against Halma Life. Could this be the match that Halma Life loses? Probably not. Let's go to the LEC. I think I already picked these games on my sheet. But Vital... Actually, let me get the sheet out. Let's do this again. LEC. All right. Game 1. Vitality against Misfits. Vitality minus 137. Wait, what? Oh, this was reversed. Oh, this was reversed. Wait, what? Vitality against Misfits. Vitality. What's going on here? Did I have the wrong? Vitality. Well, that's weird. Okay. Let's see. SK Gaming against Astralis. That's wrong too. SKXL. Nope. I have no idea where those games came from. SK Astralis. SK Rogue. Well, that's weird. Okay. So, Vitality against Misfits. Misfits just had a huge comeback win over G2. I'm on Vitality. I think that Misfits, they've made a lot of comebacks. That isn't the sign of a good team. That's the sign of a team that is in a lot of losing positions, and the team just kind of throws it. SK Gaming against Astralis. I think SK Gaming should take care of Astralis. They're they have the option of playing a much more reserved style. They kind of tried to use it against Vitality, didn't work out, but it should be more effective against a team like Astralis. Rogue against XL. I'm taking Rogue here. I mean, if XL wins this game, they're going to make playoffs. So, good luck. G2 against BDS. G2 should be fine against BDS. I don't think that they follow up yesterday's performance or today's performance with a bad match. And then Fnatic against Mad Lions. I'd probably take Mad Lions here. I just think from a value perspective, you can definitely see Mad Lions winning that one. Let's go to the LCS. So LCS next matches. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Why is that so weird? This is so weird. All these games just look like they're listed differently. The 26th is tomorrow. So Team Liquid TSM. Team Liquid TSM is minus 526. No, Team Liquid Dig. Team Liquid Dig. Minus 323 to plus 231. Okay, we're not betting on that, but we're going to pick Team Liquid coming off of their loss. TSM against CLG. TSM was minus 150, now they're minus 143. That's the exact same, basically. I do prefer TSM. I cannot believe some of their drafts, though, which is not a good sign. C9 against 100 Thieves. 100 Thieves. C9 minus 115 to plus 110. Basically the same thing. Kind of want to pick Cloud9 there. Yeah, we're going Cloud9. Immortals and FlyQuest. FlyQuest is the favorite. Minus 167, minus 150. Not much value there. It did move a little bit towards Immortals. I think that I'm still going to be on Immortals there regardless. And then the last match is going to be Evil Geniuses against Golden Guardians. Golden Guardians plays the early game well. People will start falling into the trap thinking that Golden Guardians is good because they have a lot of early game gold leads, but they draft for early game. So take that with a grain of salt. But that's all I've got for you today. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.